Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited. Tonight, I have Latta with me. She's the creator of One Artsy Mama and the author of Hand Lettering for Relaxation, Hand Lettering for Laughter, Hand Lettering for Faith, and Express Yourself, a hand lettering workbook for kids. Her latest book, Hand Lettering Off the Page, is now available. She has appeared on Hallmark's Home and Family Teaching Hand Lettering, and her designs have been featured nationally in Starbucks and Gap stores. Amy lives in Hampstead, Maryland. So, Amy, thank you so much for being with me here tonight. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. I love to teach workshops.
Awesome. So I'm really excited, selfishly, for no other reason than sort of like I was saying a little bit before the show, I have recently gotten very into writing letters, and my handwriting is awful. And while I acknowledge that this is not handwriting, my hope is that if I can have like one pretty nice looking part of the letter, whether it's their name or my name or a random word in the letter, I will also be happy with that. I can at least hang my hat on it and go, I made part of it look really good. So this is selfishly going to be really exciting for me.
Well, I'm glad you're excited. And the thing to keep in mind, Drew, and everyone else who's tuning in, is that when we're talking about hand lettering, it's an art form. So think about taking whatever preconceived notions you have about your handwriting and just throw them out the window, because we're not writing, we're lettering. And just like in any kind of art, we're going to break it down into shapes and lines. So don't think, because I have terrible handwriting, I can't do this. Instead, we're going to break it down and look at shapes and turn it into something else.
That's really exciting. I'm also bad at drawing shapes, but I'm in. I'm in either way. I'm going to try. I have a very low bar for myself, so I'm excited for it.
Okay. Well, we're excited to get started. So those of you who are joining us, hopefully you have a few handouts that you were able to print out for the program. If not, you'll be able to take a look at the ones that I'm using and follow along here. But the first one, the thing that I would like for you to pull out right now, is the one that has joy, joy, joy across the top and a sample alphabet below. So tonight, we're going to be talking about hand lettering, of course, which is sort of a broad category because it encompasses a lot of different kinds of fonts and styles and embellishments. But when most people think of hand lettering, they tend to think of one particular style of writing, which is what I have here called brush script. And what sets brush script apart from other types of fonts and lettering is, if you notice, each letter has a combination within the letter itself of thin lines and thicker lines. See how any given letter, you can see there's thick parts and thin parts. And that's what makes that brush lettered style that we see on all the signs in Target and Hobby Lobby, and we see it in marketing and graphic design. And that's what people want really to recreate on paper, like Drew said, as well as on things like wall signs and things that you can display in your home. My newest book, actually, Hand Lettering Off the Page, talks about how to take this style and put it on 25 different surfaces, including I lettered on my shoes, I lettered on flower pots and on a denim jacket, all kinds of things. So the skills that you're learning tonight, hopefully you'll be able to take even off the paper, and you'll be able to use these in all different kinds of ways. But this brush script is actually an art technique that's accomplished using something called a brush pen that we're going to talk about and play with a little bit later. But there's another way that we can get that style without having to master the art technique. It's something that I call faux calligraphy, and it's much, much easier than actually using and controlling the pressure on the brush pen. Faux calligraphy is what I like to call faking it until you make it. So this is where I always start everyone. Whether, you're a brand new beginner or you have a little lettering experience, we always start with that faux calligraphy because, first of all, it's the easiest. Second, you can do it with any kind of writing instrument you have that's just a regular bullet tip. You could use a pencil. You could use a ballpoint pen. I'm going to be using the bullet tip end of a Tombow dual brush pen, but whatever supply you have at home, literally any kind of writing utensil that you have, you can do this with chalk. You can do it with paint markers, which is another plus because even if you master the brush technique, If you want to make those wall signs or the decorated shoes or the things I was talking about a minute ago, you're not going to be able to do those with a water-based brush pen. So you're going to come back to this faux calligraphy style. So the first thing that we want to do is we're going to choose a word, and I've chosen for us to start the word joy because it's short. It has 3 letters, and that is the best thing to recommend it. It's also my word of the year for this year because after 2020, we all need a little bit more joy, I think. So on a piece of scrap paper or on your handout, what I want you to do is just to write the word joy, and you want to make sure that you leave a little bit of space in between your letters. I pretty much do my typical script here, but if you're someone whose joy would look like this, you're going to need to spread it out a little bit. So we're going to write J-O-Y. And then what we want to do, remember we said that this style of lettering is characterized by the fact that some of the lines are thin and some are thick. So right now we have all thin lines. Our job is to go back and make some of them thicker. So the rule for this, you might want to make a note of this somewhere on the paper. When we write anything, even if we're printing, anytime we're writing, our pen is moving in one of 3 basic directions across the paper. It's either moving up away from us, which is called an upstroke. It's moving down toward us on the paper, which is called a downstroke, or it's moving horizontally, like if you're crossing a T or an H or something like that. This is the horizontal stroke. Upstrokes and horizontal strokes remain thin. We're not going to do anything to those, but the downstroke is the one that's always thicker. This is the number 1 rule to getting your brush script, your hand lettering, to look the way you want it to, is by making sure the downstrokes are thicker than upstrokes and horizontal strokes. So to do that, what we're going to do is go back to our word joy, and we're going to identify everywhere that the pen was moving down toward us when we wrote it. So if you think about what your pen did, first we went up away from ourselves, so we're going to leave that line alone. Then when our pen changed and started moving down, we're just going to draw a second line beside it. We switch directions at the bottom, so we're going to leave this part as is. Then when we start it coming down again, we're going to make another double line, and we're going to keep on doing that as we go across the word joy. So anywhere that your pen was moving down on the paper gets a second line next to it. Now, at this point in the workshop, I always have at least one person who asks the same question, and it might be the one that you're thinking of right now, which is, does my second line go on the inside or the outside? And the answer is yes. There's actually no hard and fast rule for where that second line goes. What I do is I look at the spacing of my letters and I see where it makes the most sense. If I have a lot of space between my J and O, I might do my line like I did here on the outside of the J and on the outside of the O. Then on the Y, I might do the outside over here and then the outside on this side. Or if my letters are closer together, I might go on the inside. So there's really no rule which side you're going to go to. Just space it out so that your letters look even and balanced. Then the final step is that we're going to go back and we're going to color in those double lines that we've created for ourselves. And what that does is it gives us the effect of having some lines that are thick and some lines that are thin. So it gives us the look of brush lettering without mastering the technique. It's quick. Once you get the hang of it, it's easy, I promise. And it looks great. And somebody just looking at it for the first time is not going to know that you didn't do the brush technique. They're just going to think, wow, that looks really pretty. So it doesn't matter that you're doing the faux calligraphy. It's just going to look awesome. So now that you've done your first joy, what I want you to do is try that same word again. And I bet you that you're going to like your second effort better than the first. You can play around with, if you thought your first one you wrote a little too small, try a little bigger. If you feel like your first one you went too big, try a little smaller. Try spacing your letters more or less, depending on how yours turned out the first time. And make yourself a second joy. And you can practice that word as many times as you like to kind of get a feel for it. But those are the basic steps, and you can see them broken down at the top of your handout. We write the word, we thicken the downstrokes by drawing a second line, and then we color it in. You can also have fun with this by, for example, if you drew your word in black like this, you could go back with a different color and color it in. And that gives us kind of a neat look too. Some different things that you can do to make it even more artistic and fun. So once you've done the word joy, we're going to try a new word. So I'm going to suggest you could try love, because Valentine's Day is coming up and it's another nice short word. So we're going to write that word and we're going to find our downstrokes. So in this case, it's going to be the left side of the L, the left side of the O, and if your O has a loop. If your O is closed, don't worry about it. Just do the left side. It's going to be the left side of the V and the left side of the E. So love is pretty simple, and we color those in. And it's that exact same technique. We write our word, we locate our downstrokes, and then we make them artificially thicker. It's totally up to you how much space you put in between your lines. If you want really thick downstrokes, just make your lines farther apart like this. And you can have as much contrast between your thick and thin lines as you like. So far so good. You all who are watching on YouTube have a chat feature, and although I can't see it, my friend Drew can, and he can let me know if anybody has a question or a comment or something that you would like to toss into the discussion. One of the things that I actually found as a silver lining about this pandemic is that it does allow me to teach workshops from my home and be able to come into your homes. I hear many of you are from PA, so hello, neighbors to the north. But you know, I love being able to share this with broader audiences, but the one thing that's hard about that is that I can't see your faces or your papers and I can't hear your questions. But I love for the teaching experience to be as interactive as possible. So please don't feel shy. Don't hesitate. I can't even see you. I can't hear you, but I would love to field your questions. So if you don't understand something or you're practicing and something's not working, please say something so that I can help you and make this the best experience possible for all of us. So the next thing that I want you to do now that we've written joy and love is I want you to choose any word that you like and try to write that in this faux calligraphy style. So you could do, I'm going to do, for example, my first name. You could do your first name. You could do your dog's name. You could do your kids or your spouse or your best friend, or you could do a word that means something to you if you have a word of the year. Doesn't matter what it is. This is just for practice purpose.
So we actually do have a question.
Wonderful.
I think your prompting did a good job. One question and a couple of comments.
Great.
So first, let's go with comments because those are, I think, going to be easier. Sydney Chapman says, love this. Jessica Rose says, hi from England. And Joanne's spouse says, great to see your different technique. So that's pretty cool. Great.
Wonderful.
And Brandon Bear says that you could have trolled us so hard by making us write live, laugh, love. The question, though, is from Daniel Dower. They want to know if there's any chance that they could see the letter D in the faux calligraphy script on the sheet. Because they couldn't see it, I guess.
Yes, so that is actually right where I'm headed. So you are just about a half a second ahead of me. So you're choosing a word that you want to write, and you can also do your monogram or anything that you want there. And what you're going to be doing here is using the faux calligraphy script and finding the downstrokes, making your second line, and then coloring it in. Now, first of all, when you're practicing this, you can find the downstrokes by doing exactly what we talked about with joy, where you literally kind of imagine tracing over those words and, okay, here I'm going down, so I'm going to make this thick. Here I'm going up, so I'm going to leave it alone. Here I'm going down, so I'm going to make it thick. But that takes a while when you're first learning it. So what I've done is I've provided on the handout here an alphabet for reference for you. I have a lowercase alphabet and an uppercase alphabet, as well as a print alphabet, in case you don't particularly care for script handwriting, or, sometimes I have kids that join in and they want to do it, but they're not particularly skilled at cursive writing. So you can also do the same kind of faux calligraphy technique using print letters. But I put this here as a guide for you. You might form your letters differently than I do. For example, when I write my lowercase s, it looks like sort of a print S. I know a lot of folks do this sort of S, and that would simply be, again, just find the downstroke. This isn't saying that you have to write your letters the way that I write my letters, but what it's intended for is to help you find where are the downstrokes in these letters. So use it as a guide and a reference to help you see where the thick parts are and where the thin parts are. Now, my friend who asked for a D, were you asking for the lowercase d or the capital D? Because I can do either one for you. And I'm just going to clear a space here where I can do that. And do we have an answer for that yet?
Yes, we do. They said that they are looking for capital, please.
Capital. Okay. So when I do my capital D, I make a loop and I come back up and then I join it. So it sort of has a double loop there. And then I come back and I do my downstroke. And then I'm going to put another thick line over here. So this one's actually a little tricky because when I write the D, that's technically an upstroke, but it looks better if you put a downstroke. So I do. But that's the capital D. And if there's any other letters that you would like to see me write, as opposed to just looking at the reference here, you can certainly ask for that, and I will be happy to write your letter as well. Just specify for me if you want a big one or a little one, and I'll be happy to show you those. Another thing that I would note, and as we're doing this, just keep practicing words, practice names, practice things like hope. You can do your live, laugh, love if you want, or anything else that you would like to write. But as you're practicing, we're just using these letters as a reference and a guide for what's thick and what's thin. You can also, again, do a monogram. That's a nice project that you can do. Recently, over the holidays, I taught a class with Michael's where we had a square canvas and you would just put your monogram real big in the center. And then we did a wreath, which we're going to look at later as an embellishment. And then we had a little canvas project. So there's lots of things that you can do with this. But as you're practicing, I just want to let you know that on my website, amylattacreations.com, I have free printable practice pages for every single letter of the alphabet. So if this is something that you really want to get into and you want to do it more and more, there's lots of resources for you. And you, like I said, they're all free. You just go there, print out as many copies as you want. You can even laminate them, take them to Staples or something, and then you can like write on them and erase it back off and then practice again. But those practice sheets are just to get you in the habit of seeing where the downstrokes are and getting your hand used to doing something new. Just like riding a bike or driving a car, hand lettering is muscle memory. So your hand is actually going to learn how to do it before your brain does. And eventually, if you do it enough, you'll find that you don't have to think about it anymore. You'll be able to do it almost reflexively. So it's just as easy for me to write my grocery list like this as it is to write it in my regular scribble. So are there any other letters, Drew, that we wanted to see, or any other words that you want to see written out in faux calligraphy?
Well, I don't have any other requests for letters from anyone else. I personally have a request, though.
What's that?
How would you do something, or how would you work it if it's going to be multiple words? For example, let's say, hypothetically, that someone were a big hockey fan, and that they really liked the Red Wings, which is a team name that's got 2 words in it. How would you set that up so that it still looks good and flows between the words, I guess?
So red and wings are 2 different words. I'm sorry, I'm not a hockey person. I'm
That's
a football
okay.
person.
Red and wings are 2 different words. I'm sure that when our store manager sees this, she will have a good laugh about me finding a way to bring the Red Wings into it somehow.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, so I would just separate them like that. And then by the time that you add your downstrokes, and again, we're just looking for any place that your pen was moving down. We're going to make that part thicker. Everything else is going to stay thin. And then, I mean, I don't really do anything special in between. You could put an embellishment of some kind there if you want it, but I think it's going to look pretty awesome just by the time that you add your thickened downstrokes. And it's going to look like it really is a piece of art.
Yeah.
You could put that on a canvas and frame it and hang it in your house, hypothetical Drew.
I absolutely could. We do have another question. This one is from Jessica Rose. Can we see a capital H and a G in script, please? So, Jessica, yes. I'm going to assume that we mean like the nice calligraphy script. If that's not right, please just let me know in the comments.
Okay, so for the H, I make an upstroke. I come down, loop, loop, and that's how I make my capital H. And then I would have this left side would be a downstroke, and then the right side would be a downstroke as well. So that was the H. And you said a G. There's two different ways that you can do there's a million different ways you can do a G. One is more like a traditional cursive G, like so, and you would have your downstroke in the loop and your downstroke on the right side. And then a lot of folks in the lettering community, they like to do something that looks a little more like a lowercase g, but they'll do that as a capital. I tend to do that a lot as well. What you'll find is a lot of people in the lettering community, when we do our brush script, for whatever reason, we tend to do mostly lowercase. We don't do as many capital letters. And what I tend to do when we pair fonts, because a lot of times I won't just do the brush lettering, I'll have a combination of brush lettering and print. For example, if you look at my book title, I have print and the brush lettering together, as well as sort of a filled in. But what I'll do is I'll typically do lowercase for my brush script and then all caps for my print. So it's just one more opposite. So you've got script and print, you've got uppercase and lowercase. That's certainly not a hard and fast rule, but a lot of what you'll see on Pinterest and Instagram, et cetera, if you're following lettering artists, is you'll see a lot of lowercase script versus the capital. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't still do capital if that's what you want to do. I was an English teacher for several years in the public school system here in Maryland, and it's hard to break the English teacher of the proper capitalization, I will admit. So right now, hopefully you have a scrap paper that's full of some practice, individual letters, words, team names, Baltimore Ravens for me, but I know that's blasphemy in PA, so I apologize for my Eagles and Steelers fans up there. My dad's a Steelers fan just to not be a Ravens fan. So,
wow. Okay.
Yeah, he's still a little bitter about the Colts leaving. So, but we have practice here and practice sheets on my website again. So I also provided in your handouts another practice sheet, which you can use for the faux calligraphy if you like. Or what we're going to do now is we're going to talk a little bit about brush script. So if you want to hold on to this one and use it to practice brush script, you can do that as well. So I mentioned when I started that there's two ways to get this look. One is the faux calligraphy that we just did. The second way is by actually using a brush pen. And I'm not sure, did you guys have a supply list? Drew, do you know if there was suggested pens to buy?
So I'm looking at the supply list now. It does have one specific pen, the Tombow Beginner lettering kit was suggested, and that a pen marker with a brush tip was also suggested.
Okay.
These should all be available on our website, by the way. If you're watching now and going, it should be on our website, you should be able to click and download it directly. And if not, or if you're one of the people who's watching this after the show and going, well, wait a minute, how do I get it? We are going to be sending out an email reminding everyone to come check out the video, and the links will be included to download those as well there.
Perfect. So the Tombow Beginner Lettering Kit has this pen that I've been using called the Tombow Dual Brush Pen, and I'll talk about that in a sec. You'll get, I think you get this color and the black, and then you'll also get a mono drawing pen, you'll get a Fudenosuke, a couple just really must-have kind of lettering tools if this is a hobby that you want to pursue. So the Tombow Dual Brush Pen is a favorite of mine because it has the two tips. It has the bullet tip end that we were just using, which is just sort of a nice fine point marker. And then it also has this brush tip on the other end. Other companies make brush tip markers as well. Tombow is my personal favorite. They seem to be the best quality and to hold up the best. And so that's what I would recommend investing in. But you certainly can invest in, I know there's others that are out there in the market that are less expensive. You can try those out at first. But I think eventually you'll probably end up with the Tombows. And the brush tip, basically, it's called a brush tip because it's meant to mimic the action of a paintbrush. So if you press it on your paper and you move the marker around, what you'll see, and hopefully you can see mine here, is that the tip flexes and moves. And that's what it's supposed to do, because this is designed to respond to the amount of pressure that you apply when you write with it. So we talked about how downstrokes are supposed to be thick. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a series of downstrokes, just pulling down on the paper toward yourself. And as you do, I want you to really push on your pen. Please don't be afraid to do this. I know so many people, you have this nice shiny new marker. You're like, yes, this is so cool. I don't want to break it. I promise you won't, because that's what this pen is meant to do. Now, I will say that long-term, laser computer paper or medium weight sketch paper that's nice and smooth, or Bristol board, those are going to be the kindest to your markers. If you're working with regular, like discount Walmart copy paper, that will tend to fray them a little bit faster. So nicer paper will take care of your nice markers. But you'll notice the thickness of the lines that I'm getting here. If your lines are not this thick, you're not pushing hard enough. Push harder. I promise it won't break. So what you want to do is just pull down toward yourself, and that is a downstroke. In contrast, when we make an upstroke, we're going to be moving away from ourselves, and this time we're barely going to apply pressure, just enough to glide it across the page. And what you'll notice is a big difference in the width. And that is how we get that contrast between thick lines and thin lines when we're using a brush pen. It's all about how much you push. A question that I often get at this point in the workshop is, does it matter what angle I hold my pen? Some artists will tell you that you should hold it at a 45-degree angle when you're doing a downstroke and switch to more of a 90 when you're doing an upstroke, which you can do. For me, that's a lot of work to keep switching my hand. What I'll do is I will keep my hand at a constant 45, but I'm changing the pressure that I'm applying. And what you'll see is some really cool magic, where I'll get thick lines when I push and thin lines when I release. So now that you've done some downstrokes and some upstrokes, what we're going to do is we're going to alternate those to give your hand a feel for switching. So you're going to go down, then up, and down, and up, and down, and up, and repeat. And these are the drills that calligraphers and lettering artists do all day long to practice when they're learning their skill. Eventually, you won't need to do that anymore, but for now, this is how we develop the building blocks of using a brush pen. Once you've alternated, we're going to alternate again, but we're just not going to pick up our pen. So we're going to go down and up, down and up. And you want to try to get a nice smooth transition there at the bottom. So as soon as your pen starts to change direction and it's not going down anymore, you're going to release the pressure, and that changes the kind of line that you're making.
So we have a comment that I think could lead into a question. I'm going to play off it a little bit. This one's from Brandon Bear. The change of pressure is something I always heard of, but never known how to practice. So the best way to do it is just to create that sort of, I'm saying it's a U, but this quasi-U kind of symbol. What are some other good things that we can do if we're having trouble figuring out the proper application of pressure?
Yes. So this is called an underturn. And basically what I'm going to show you is the drills that you can do. I'm going to show you exactly what you should do to practice because it's going to give you all the basic shapes that are the building blocks for letters. So the underturn, as you can see, is going to be a building block for the letter U. It's going to be a building block for the letter W and some other letters as well. Then we're going to try alternating without picking up our pen, but we're going to start with an upstroke, which is going to give us a different kind of building block. We're going to get an upside down U, or some people call them mountains and valleys. So this one is called an overturn. I will label that for you. And really, these drills, you just fill a notebook with them. Do them over and over. And then eventually, you'll say, oh, look, if I do just a downstroke plus an overturn, I get an N. If you do a downstroke plus 2 overturns, you're going to get an M. So when you start putting these things together, you'll find that you're able to make letters because you've practiced the shapes. So we have the underturn and the overturn. We also have the oval. And this is what you're going to use, obviously, for the letter O. An oval plus a downstroke is going to give you an A. It's also going to be something that you use for the letter D. So this one is the oval. We have a loop, which is just up and back down, but we're going to cross over that first line, and that you can see in the D as well as an L. So lots of these exercises and drills, you practice them, you put them together, and then you're going to find yourself able to do the alphabet. And then the last one is what we use. It's a descender loop is what we call it. This is an ascender loop, and this is a descender loop. It just means it goes up and it goes down. And this is obviously what you're going to use for like a G, a J, those kinds of letters. So some people try the brush script and they absolutely hate it. They hate the idea of changing the pressure. They don't like the pen. If that's you, that's fine. No one ever said that you had to master brush script. You can do faux calligraphy forever and ever, and no one will ever know the difference because your lettering is still going to look awesome. And like I said, if you're doing things off paper, you're going to be doing faux calligraphy 99% of the time anyway, because the tools that you have to use for those surfaces, like paint pens, they don't come with brush tips. So you're going to have to use faux calligraphy. But if this is something that you're really into, again, just practice, practice, practice. Fill a notebook, fill a sketchbook, do the drills. I have the drills on my website. There's a blog post that's all about just how to do these shapes and then what letters they make. And then you can take that handout that I gave you, this one, and you can practice tracing over the letters. Now you'll notice that these letters look smaller than the letters that I've been writing here. The Tombow Dual Brush Pen is wonderful for practice and for getting a feel of these really big downstrokes and the really thin upstrokes. It's also a little bit harder to control than a smaller brush tip marker, and it's going to give you big letters. If you want to write in a more standard size, I would recommend, which comes also in your kit that we recommended, is the Tombow Fudenosuke. It's a big name for a little pen that is very powerful. It's my favorite lettering pen of all time. You can get it in black, and then they also recently released, I think it was like a year and a half ago, they released colors, which is very cool too. But the Tombow Fudenosuke has a brush pen, but it's smaller. So you can do these very same drills and exercises, but you'll notice the lines are smaller. You still get a contrast between thick and thin. You can still do your same shapes, same practice, but it's a lot smaller, and a lot of folks will find, especially after you've just used the big one, this one is easier to control. But the big one is easier to learn with. So when you're first trying it out, I would use this one and then switch to the Fudenosuke for more and more practice. So this one is sized for the Fudenasuke. So if you have this pen, it's perfect for going back and tracing over these and applying the pressure. And like I said, if you don't want to do the brush script, you can also use this practice page for the faux calligraphy. At this point, does anybody have any questions so far?
So far,
like more smooth, it looks like you kind of knew what you were doing. And then you can look at it and say, oh, I don't like the way that I transitioned at the bottom of the O. I need to change my pressure sooner. Next time I'll do that. So be gentle with yourself, relax your hand, and try to go a little bit more quickly and see if that helps it.
Excellent. So in keeping with tradition here, as soon as I asked a question that was selfish and about me and my inability to do stuff, the encoding software froze for a second, so I had to restart the stream. So I got your answer to me, but nobody else did. Which weirdly might be okay. But I think if you want to repeat the stuff about going quickly going slowly to build up the stamina to go quickly, I think that would be something that other people would find really useful also. So I do apologize for that. It is sort of a running joke lately.
Oh, that's funny. So what I was saying is that a lot of times people will want everything to be perfect. And so you go really slowly and you're trying really hard to get it just right. But you see, if I go slow, even mine doesn't look great. What you want is to approach it with confidence, even if you're not confident. And the faster you go, the less opportunity your hand has to shake, because the slower you're going, then you're able to make more mistakes, believe it or not. So kind of just go with it. I also find that a lot of folks, when they're trying too big and it's a lot of hand movement. Just try to write it small, just whatever size you normally do your handwriting, just right here, nice and easy. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to be progress. So a little bit faster, a little bit smaller, try to relax and just, give yourself some grace. You're learning a new skill.
Yeah, I think that is great advice. Again, I wish that I could do better. I think approaching it with confidence seems like a really, really good way to be about it.
Absolutely. Fake it until you make it. Yeah. Art is not about perfection.
All right. No other questions, it seems, so far.
Okay, wonderful. So we have two different methods to get our brush script look. We have faux calligraphy and we have brush script. One of them you can do with a bullet tip, any kind of writing utensil you have. The other one can only be done with a brush pen. Other types of pens don't respond to the changes in pressure. If you take a regular fine tip marker and you try to push really hard, you're not going to get a difference. So one is for everything, one is for brush tip markers. And both of them are going to give you a very similar effect. Now that we've looked at the brush script, I want to show you really quickly. I talked about pairing two different styles of fonts, script and print. And I want to show you a super easy trick that I think you're going to like to make your printing look more artistic. So when you're in school and you're learning how to write, you probably learned how to write on something that looked neater than that, but like that, where you have guidelines. And these guidelines have some names. Most of them you don't really need to remember. But one of them, this is called the cap height, because that's how tall your capital letters are. And then you have what we call a baseline, which is where your letters sit and line up like little soldiers. And then this guy right here in the middle is called the X height. And that's because if you write an X, that's where it crosses. And this line is typically used for a few different things. One is to say, okay, that's how tall our little letters are going to be. And it's also the place where things happen that happen in the middle of letters. So for example, when we cross an H, or when we cross an A, or when we do our B, everything happens on that happy little X height line. Now, watch what happens if we say, you know what? We're artists. We know the rules, but we can break them. And we take the X height and we bring it up here. So all of a sudden, when we're writing our A, now we're going to cross it up here. And when we write our B, we're going to make our first bump stop there. and so on. If we have an H, and if we have a P, and we have an R, and all of a sudden you find yourself looking like a piece of Ray Dunn pottery. How many of you guys, give us a little thumbs up in the comment if you know who that is? If you go to Home Goods, you'll find those mugs, right? And those mugs have like one word on them, and they say create, or mom, or love, and that kind of thing. It's just a white mug with the black writing. And that is what Ray Dunn did, and built an empire and made a fortune, is she raised the X height on her letters, and all of a sudden now they look artistic. So for example, instead of, if I were just printing and I'm writing the word happy, like, okay, that's not really exciting, but let's say I'm going to play with my X height and I'm writing on somebody's birthday card. Now, all of a sudden, I look like I did something artistic, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing happens if we lower the X height. We just get a different effect. So again, this is where we're going to cross. So now we have a big top loop. Same thing with the R. We get a big P, those kinds of things. So now our happy is going to look something like this. And once again, it looks like we did something really artistic. And all we're doing is printing. We're just playing around with where this X height line is. So you can play around with that a little bit. I told you a lot of times I'll do the all caps print. And this is what I tend to do, is the brush script or the faux calligraphy paired with this style of print. And sometimes I do the high, sometimes I do the low. I like the look of both, so it just sort of depends on the day. My basic rule, because a lot of times I'll get asked a question like, let's say I'm doing a quote and I have a whole bunch of words. Which ones do I do in script? Which ones do I do in print? And my basic rule is, think about what words you want to emphasize. Those are the ones that you're going to put in script. And then all the little words like the, an, a, or, for, those are the words that go in the print. So that gives you something that you can pair with your brush script. So does anybody have any questions about that part? I just wanted to show you that. I don't even always throw that in the workshops, but it's just really fun. And it's something that anybody can do. Kids can do it. And it just looks so elevated compared to your regular print. And it pairs really nicely with the script.
So far, I think we are good on questions.
Okay. Very good. So then the other thing that I wanted to instruct is just a few simple embellishments that you can use. If you look at hand-lettered designs on Pinterest and Instagram, or those signs that you're buying in Target, a lot of times they're not just the words. They also have some little embellishments. And so I want to show you a few things that you can do to go with your hand-lettered words. So the first one, there's a third sheet, a third handout for you that has these on there. And the first one is just an arrow. And all you do is you just start out with your line, a horizontal line, and you put a triangle on one end. So again, we're just dealing in lines and basic shapes. And then you're going to put a little V on the end, and you're going to come up and put another one. You're going to connect those V's together, and that's going to be the end of your arrow. So you could color that in. Or if you wanted, on the handout, you'll see I did some little diagonal lines to be like feathers. You can put dots, you can put little lines just to make it a little bit fancier. But that's just a basic arrow, and you can do any type of line that you want. So if you want to do a wavy line arrow, you can do that. If you want to do a looping arrow, you can do that. So you just make whatever kind of line you want, and then you draw the triangle and then the little tail. And again, you can add any kind of little embellishments or doodads you want along that. But arrows are really fun and useful for a couple of different purposes. One is, a lot of things lately are sort of that boho, tribal kind of aesthetic. So quotes like adventure awaits, things like that. Don't look back, you're not going that way. Arrows work well with things like that. There's also, if you are into Bible journaling, and they have like the wide margins and you're doing art out here or in any kind of a book or something like that, you can draw an arrow to the thing that you're illustrating. Or if you have a quote and you just really want to emphasize a particular word or part of it, you can draw arrows, because exactly what they do is draw the eye in to whatever word it is that you want people to focus on. So that's one fun embellishment that you can do. Another one that I like a lot is just a leafy vine. And to do that, you're just going to make a little arch and you're going to put a teardrop shape on an end. And then you're going to go down the line. And I kind of think of this as drawing like heart shapes going down. And this is going to give you a nice leafy vine. But you can do a lot of variations on this. So one thing you can do is you can change the shape of your leaves. So you can do a more traditional leaf shape where your leaves are pointier than my little heart shapes. And you'll see when you look at them side by side, even though I did basically the exact same technique, I have two things that look different. You can also go back in and add veins on the leaves. You can color the leaves in, of course. Anything like that. You can add little dots, little flowers, just to take them to the next level. But lots of different things you can do there. There's also an example on the handout page where it starts out small, and then as you go down the line, the leaves get progressively bigger. And I'm sure you can think of plants like, for example, a fern, where that's what the leaves do, where they get bigger as they go down toward the stem. So lots of variations on that. You can also do any kind of line that you want, just like with the arrow. So you can do a wavy line. You can alternate your leaves on the line. So lots and lots of possibilities there. And then the other thing that you can do with this type of illustration is you can do the wreath. And I mentioned earlier how we did a monogram canvas for Michael's and Tombo, where we did the monogram with the wreath around it. And to do the wreath, you just do what I like to call a messy circle, because that's literally what it is. I just draw a circular shape, and I trace over it a couple times, not really trying very hard to trace exactly. I let my pen kind of just go wild. And then you're going to go around and you're going to put those leaf shapes around your circles. And again, you can alternate them. You can put them side by side. You can make them any shape you want. You can color them in. You can do just half of it. And this just makes a really nice little embellishment. This is really nice. Like at Christmas time, we practice writing joy. You could write joy inside of the wreath. That makes a nice canvas decoration, or on a gift tag. You can put a monogram inside of this. And it doesn't have to be a Christmassy type thing. That's what we did because it was a holiday class. We put like holly berries and holly leaves in it, but just regular leaves like this is totally evergreen. So that's something really simple that you can do as you're practicing your lettering, and you're mastering one letter at a time. You can certainly do something like that. Cool. So that's another. Do we have a question?
We do. I've got two questions here.
Great.
One from Jessica Rose. Is there a nice way to embellish to or dear in a greeting card? So start there, and then we'll get to Daniel's after that.
Okay. So one thing that you can do is you can embellish the letter itself. So you can do like, I have a whole blog post and I have whole chapters in my books about how there's different ways that you can cross a T or something like that. So you can certainly embellish just the word itself. Another thing that you could do is we're going to do some flowers in just a minute. So that's something you could put like a little set of flowers. You could also, if you had your to or your dear, you could just do like 3 little accent lines, something like that. Or sometimes I'll do sort of like a teardrop or a raindrop shape. Still 3 of them where like the center one is longer and then you have the smaller ones on the sides. And what's really cool, this is a neat little trick, the brush pen end, if you just push that down on the behalf.
The next question is from Daniel Dower. They want to know, would that be how to do a laurel? Daniel, do you mean like the
Yeah.
leaves we were seeing earlier? Like, is that how you would do like a laurel, like Roman laurel? What are you trying to?
Yeah.
What do you mean there?
Yeah, that's how you would do it.
Yes, that is what he means. Okay, so it's the same concept. You would just space your leaves out a little differently, I guess.
Yep.
Awesome.
So super easy to do. So I talked about flowers, so let's do it. So for the flowers, and this is something that you can add to the wreath as well. So what you're going to do is you're going to make that messy circle again. And I like to do these kind of in sets of 3. And then on the inside, you're going to place some dots. And that's going to be like the center of your flower. So it's just those messy circles with the dots in the center. And then we're going to go in and just add a couple of leaf shapes. And again, we're just working with really basic shapes here. And you have something that looks really pretty. And you can get as crazy with this as you like. Rosebuds are just little spirals. Everybody can draw a spiral. So you just add a couple of those in. You can do a few like 3-petal flowers. And again, if you want to use the other side of your pen will do the work for you and make those little petal flowers. You can do just a little curling vine or a line that comes out. So you can make this as complex or as simple as you like. But a lot of times actually, let me grab this canvas to show you. This is a project that is in my newest book. And it's just on canvas, done with paint marker. So I did faux calligraphy for our last name and the year we got married. And then this is the basic wreath. And then here I just did those sets of flowers to embellish. So really easy. There's nothing on here that you didn't learn how to do tonight. So it's just the last name. And then here is the caps. You can see I raised my X height. This is just that same faux calligraphy. Here's your wreath with your leaves. And here's your little flowers. So you are totally possessing the knowledge that you need to create something like this. So what I would encourage you to do is just, as you think about making your first art piece, play around on scrap paper. I always tell people to start by making a rough draft. I told you I was an English teacher and you just can't teach that out of somebody. So I always like a rough draft where I do a basic sketch. Now, I don't go in and thicken all the downstrokes in my sketch. I just sketch out the positions of my words and then just get a feel for what it's going to look like on the canvas. And then when you're working on something like canvas, or even if it's a piece of Bristol board, which is something that you could frame, I like to lightly position my words in pencil, and then I'll go back over them with my brush pens or my paint pens or whatever kind of marker I'm using, and then erase the pencil mark when you're done. But I always like to kind of plan that out. I also want to give you a few tips about how to space and center things when you are making a project like this. First of all, I always draw, I get a ruler and a pencil and I make my baselines, because if not, if I freehanded it, it's going to be all over the place because I can't write in a straight line to save my life. So you always want to give yourself some basic guidelines to work with. And then the next thing I do is I draw a vertical guideline going down the center of my project. And then to do the centering, what I always say is start with the center letter or space of each line. So for example, in our last name, it's going to be this T. So I would pencil in the position of that T first. And then I would work out to the right and work backwards to the left so that I knew that my word was centered. And then the same thing here with my M, and it's actually the space between the M and the I in family. And so it works. I also do like metal stamping. I do metal stamp jewelry. Same thing. Anytime you're trying to center something, start in the middle and work your way out. And that way you know that everything's where you want it to be. So those are kind of my tips for spacing and positioning. Always starting with pencil lightly, very lightly. And then you can go back with a nice, I think your kit has a Tombow eraser in it. You can go back. Those are great erasers. You can get rid of any lines that you can still see after your pen is dry. So any questions about any of that?
So far we are good, but if one pops up a little later, I will be sure to let you know.
Okay, perfect. So basically, at this point in the workshop, what I like to do is encourage people to start planning out what their first piece would be, something that you would like to make to display in your home or to give to somebody as a gift. If you happen to have a canvas that you want to work on, this one I think is 8.5 by 11. But you can use any size, anything that you like. For the monogram canvases, I have one of those I can show you too. I like to do like an 8 by 8 because it's square. This is the holiday one that I mentioned. So it's just going to be your letter with a wreath around it. Super simple first project to do. But I would encourage you to try to make something with what you learned tonight. And if you don't have a canvas or Bristol board or something like that to do it on, just plan it out. Think about what you would do and then treat yourself on Amazon or pop into Michael's and you can get yourself something to actually letter on, so that you can hang it in your house. You can give it as a gift and do something with your new skill. So at this point, I would encourage you to kind of plan out something that you might like to do. And I would love to answer any questions that you have about hand lettering, about projects, about supplies. I know we covered a lot of things. We talked about faux calligraphy. We talked about brush script. We talked about changing your print by raising or lowering what we call the X height. We talked about embellishments. So there's probably a lot swimming around in your head right now. I would love to field any questions about any of that, any questions about the books, any questions about me or what I do, the website. I will mention really quickly, my books. I actually have 5 hand lettering books. So if you enjoyed what we did tonight, those are a great resource. I do have on my website at amylattacreations.com a ton of, like I said, free resources. If you go to the top menu and you click on projects, it's going to take you to where you can choose lettering tutorials, which will step you through. And there's also a place for free practice pages. And there's every letter of the alphabet has its own free practice pages. So lots of resources. But the books, the first one that I wrote is called Hand Lettering for Relaxation. And it's a great place to start. It starts off just like we did tonight with faux calligraphy, takes you through some of these embellishments and then a lot more. And all of my books, except the most recent one, are designed to be workbooks where at the beginning of each chapter, there's a design, and then it teaches you how to do what you need to do to create it. And at the end, there's a blank page with a border that you can color if you want, and then you recreate the design or any design you want in that space. But it's designed that you can copy the inspiration that was at the beginning of the chapter. So there's 40 some chapters in Hand Lettering for Relaxation, and it's just designed to introduce you to the hobby. My next book was a book for kids. So if you have little folks in your life, like 6 to 17 or so, Express Yourself is designed to be basically the same as the original book, but geared for kids. So it's shorter, it's smaller, and it teaches them embellishments like tacos and cupcakes and donuts and little animals, things that my kids wanted to learn how to do. And so I figured other people's kids might want to do as well. I have Hand Lettering for Laughter, and it just expands on more fonts, more embellishments, but it's designed to have funny quotes that you're recreating in each chapter. Hand Lettering for Faith, which is about Bible journaling. And then this new one, like I said, is a little bit different because this one has 25 projects, each on a different surface. So it's fabric, it's on glass, ceramic, it's on denim. I did it on my shoes, like I said, on my hat, wood, chalkboard, slate, all different kinds of things in there. And it walks you through each of those projects, and you can recreate them exactly, or it just gives you the tips that you need to know, hey, if I want to make a wall sign, what supplies do I need and how does the process work? Or if I want to letter on a mirror, what do I need and how do I do it? So you can take it as inspiration for your own projects or recreate mine. But those are the 5 books that I have, which I'm not sure which ones are available at Town Books, but hopefully all of them. Wink, wink. But you can certainly ask those questions to our friends at Town Books. But you can check out the books there, and they're all just designed for everybody from the very, very beginner up through people who have been lettering for a while and give you all kinds of inspiration and information.
Awesome. So we do have another question in the live stream.
Okay.
So our question is from Jessica Rose. Can we have the website name again, please?
Yes, you may. It is amylattacreations.com. And I try to be very easy to find. So if you are on social media, everywhere except for Twitter, I am at Amy Latta Creations. And if you have practice pages from tonight, things that you've written, if you make a project, if you post it on social media, please tag me because it makes me so happy to see what you're doing. It kills me that I can't see your papers right now because my favorite thing is walking around the room and looking at what everybody's doing, because I love to see the different things that people create, and I love to be able to help and encourage and tell you what an awesome job you're doing. So if you would tag me, that would totally make my night. If you don't want to put it out on social media for everybody, find me on Instagram and just send me a DM, and then I can see it and nobody else will see it. But I'm Amy Latta Creations everywhere. I even just got a TikTok because that's what all the cool kids are doing it now. So I actually did a campaign with TikTok because they're trying to change their image to be more of an educational platform. So they contracted me to do 40 how-to videos. So if you have a TikTok, I have some of these lettering things in little videos, some cool tips, tricks, and things that you can do with your hand lettering. So you can check those out. But yeah, Amy Latta Creations everywhere but Twitter. That's Amy L Creations, just because it was too long.
Gotcha. Well, before I hop into my shameless spiel for the bookstore, I do have a couple of quick questions for you. These are just my questions. And they're more related to you and how you got started in this. So first of all, how did you get started with lettering? What was your introduction to the hobby?
So I started lettering in October of 2015. It was just starting to become more popular. And honestly, I think, this is my opinion, but I think what happens sometimes with artistic trends like that is that something starts to go away and the artistic community and the community in general goes, oh no, we better do something or this is going to be gone. And I think that happened, like, think about chalkboards. Like when I was in school, that's what was on the wall. Nobody had a chalkboard in their house. Who wants that, right? But then as soon as they pulled them out of the classrooms and they put whiteboards and smartboards up, everybody went, oh no, black chalkboard, must have. And we all ran out and we bought them and we put them in our house and we painted our walls like what is that? But I think it was this reaction to something we're going to lose. And I think that that's why hand lettering became a thing about 5-6 years ago, because kids aren't learning how to write in cursive anymore. A lot of places, some are, but in general, our society is trending digital. We're going toward graphic design, graphic art, and we're in danger of losing that pen to paper exercise, the art of handwriting. And so I think the reaction to that was, oh no, let's do this. Let's get back to this, back to the basics, back to calligraphy, back to handwriting. But calligraphy is kind of intimidating. And so we put a modern spin on it. Instead of the pointed pen, we created the brush pen. And, this whole little pool of artists that were doing this started popping up on Pinterest and they started popping up on Instagram. And I started to see it and say, wow, that really looks amazing. I used to do calligraphy with sort of the nib and, I just dabbled with it when I was in high school. And I thought, oh, well, I always really liked that. Let me try this new thing. This is fun. And so I kind of taught myself how to do it by looking at the letters and playing with the pen and trying to figure out what to do. There were a couple of people who were out there teaching how to do it, but they were mostly talking to artists, people who had a real art background. And what I found was that there was nothing out there to teach average regular people who weren't, art majors how to do this. So my website already existed. I was, at the time, it was called One Artsy Mama. My son Noah was really small at the time, and when I created it, and we were doing kid crafts, and so it started out that way. And then as he grew, kind of evolved into more home decor and other kinds of crafts that I was sharing on my website. So I thought, I have a teaching background, and I'm learning how to do this new skill. Let me share it with people. So I did a very basic faux calligraphy tutorial, and it took off like crazy because no one else out there was explaining it the same way that I was explaining it. So that sort of started the handwriting, hand lettering craze for me, because everybody who was reading my website and who was following me on social media, they just wanted more. So I had to teach myself more and more and learn more and practice more, so that I could teach them. And because of all of that, I ended up getting the first book deal, and it just sort of took off from there. So I still share all kinds of projects on my website, but it always comes back to hand lettering at the end of the day. That's the heart of what I do.
Perfect. Well, actually, you ended up answering my second question, which was, tell us about the writing of your books. But I'm gonna spin it then a little bit, and instead ask, when you're working. So obviously, this is a little bit of a different book. This isn't a novel. So when you're working with your editor, when you're working with pitching this book, how does that work? How, do you design the chapters? Do you say, hey, here's how the lesson plan should work, so to speak? Or what's the process like?
Well, from the beginning, my publisher it's a perfect marriage, because Page Street Publishing, they are located in Salem, Massachusetts. Cool place to be. They were specializing in cookbooks. They had a couple of craft books, and they had coloring books. And so when I came to them with the idea of hand lettering for relaxation, they were like, oh, we don't have anything like this, but we do have a lot of adults who like to color. And that's a relaxing, therapeutic, art therapy kind of thing. I bet our adult coloring audience would really be into what you're doing. And that's why I mentioned those border pages that I did. It's blank in the middle for you to create on, and then there's a border that I drew that you can color. So it was sort of bringing a little bit of the coloring book into what I do, to speak to their audience. But they have been very open, and the first book did extremely well and still is doing extremely well. We actually got it translated into Portuguese, so we have some folks in Brazil who read it, and that first book has sold over 100,000 copies.
That's amazing.
So because of that, they trust me a lot. And so when I come to them with a new idea, they're very open to it, and they kind of let me do me, which I appreciate very much. And so I come to them and I say, these are the techniques I want to teach, or these are the projects I want to do. And I mean, I submit them, hey, this is what I'm thinking. And if they don't like something, they'll come back. But typically, they trust me to come up with the content, and they do more of the layout end of things. And they do, just the basic content editing, things like that. It kills me that they take out my Oxford commas, because I feel very strongly about the Oxford comma. But it is what it is, So.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't have a strong opinion on the Oxford comma. I understand the reason for it, but I don't fight them. All right, so with that all being said, I'm going to shamelessly plug our store.
Please do.
So, Town Book Center. If you liked this tonight and you think, gee, I'd like to get these books, and you live in Pennsylvania, you can do that. You can get those books from us, Town Book Center. We're located in Collegeville, Pennsylvania, and any of her books that we don't have in stock at the moment, we can always bring them in for you. I can tell you right now that we do absolutely have her latest book, and I feel like we have, I think we've got the Bible, the faith book as well in our art section.
Okay.
So if you're ever in the store, these are all going to be located in our art section, which is right next to our travel section. If, however, you're not in Collegeville, or you just don't feel comfortable traveling right now, don't want to go into a store, we understand completely. You can always order with us online at townbc.com. That's T-O-W, N as in Nike, E as in Echo, B as in Bravo, C as in Charlie.com. And you can select to either have the books delivered to you, whether it's direct from the warehouse, or it comes to us and then we deliver it to you directly, or if you prefer, you can always do curbside pickup where the books will come to us, we'll let you know when they're in, you pull up to the store, give us a ring, and we bring them out to you. Whatever works for you, though, we are happy to try and provide. And again, I really just want to thank you guys all for being here, and I also want to thank Amy for spending her time with us tonight and showing me how to try to make my letters a little bit better. I am sure that the people I write will comment on it. Hopefully, they'll look good. You know what? I'm gonna just say it. If I follow the rules and I commit to it, I'm sure they'll come out perfect.
Absolutely. And for those of you who are in the PA area, I don't know if where you are in PA, if you get ABC 27. But Good Day PA airs at 10 o'clock every day, and I have a twice monthly segment called Getting Crafty on Good Day PA. So I can come to your living room twice a month, and sometimes I'm doing hand lettering projects. Sometimes I'm doing other general crafting. I was actually just on there yesterday. I know they broadcast out of Harrisburg, so I'm not sure where that is in relation to you. But if you get ABC 27, you can see me twice a month on there as well.
Excellent. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it, and we will see you guys next time. Take care, everyone. Have a good rest of your night.